Okay, so hi everybody. I'm here, believe it or not, after my last videos around Mordheim with the creator of Mordheim, Tuomas Pirinen. I've done my best.
Very good.
And yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you so much publicly for being so kind and saying we could have some time together. And I mean, I guess a good place to start would be, we were just talking about how you created this game 23 years ago. And now, like, you're seeing these videos pop up where we're talking about it. And you just kind of said that I'm in a way kind of like a guinea pig. So yeah, could you talk a little bit about, I think right at the beginning, like what it's like for you to see these videos popping up around Mordheim? And then
Well,
maybe we could talk about how you came up with the idea and work it that way.
so for me, it's the Mordheim obviously was part of the mainline Warhammer universe, and it was designed as a small-scale game that would lead people to playing the Warhammer game of Fantasy Battles, which is a armies games as opposed to the skirmish game that Mordheim is. So the at the time it had a very clear and specific place in the Games Workshop portfolio and product line and the history of the Warhammer world. But now because there were many of these specialist games, and most of them, even though quite a few of them were very good, most of them have fallen to the wayside. There's been dozens of them, and if there's a couple of these, it's the that have lived on. But the Mordheim is also special because there never was another edition. It's
Yeah.
and yet it continued to have the massive grassroots following. I mean, it's amazing that Necromunda, that is a game that the Gamesworks the released a new version of and supported with new models. And you look at the Facebook group. I mean, I love Necromunda. It was made by my good friends Jervis and Andy. But it's still the fact that there is more people in the Mordheim groups than Necromunda groups, even though it's supported by Games Workshop, is amazing. And I get people who have no connection at all to the original flow of the game and the sort of where it was in the Warhammer mythos, and they discover this game in these bizarre, unusual ways rather than learning to play the game in the Games Workshop store as the original crew that started playing it was, and how they come to it and how they view it, because it's a very, 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 very different game than anybody would make today. So and you get a more unusual people. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was, and there's no the surprise to you, that wargaming has historically been extraordinarily male-dominated hobby for historical reasons. But Mordheim always, even in the beginning, had a number of female adherents. It's which I find again very interesting, because I don't believe in making. I mean, sorry, if I'm making a game that is not specifically aimed for a target audience, but is in general like a creative endeavor, I don't try to sort of change it to meet some specific taste. Story, backgrounds, and lore doesn't come to me that anyway when I'm creating. It's but for some reason, it's even though Mordheim is really dark and sort of perhaps the Games Workshop at its grimmest. It's somewhat counterintuitive that it gathers quite an unusual player base compared to the money of the other games. So I was also, from that point of view, I was interested to sort of observe how you see it. Now, creation of Mordheim, this was year 1999. So forget everything you have. So no nice smartphones.
No phones.
HD photography was slow and expensive. There was no plastic junk from China. It's the everything was not Chinese.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those days. I remember when you had to ring somebody and arrange to meet them, and if they didn't show up, there was nothing you could do because there were no mobile phones.
Yes, exactly. And at that point, the whole world believed that the world is going to end. So this was around 1999, 98.
Yes, it was the millennium bug where people were worried that computers.
That all the computers are going to break down and we will all starve to death, and then be cannibals and zombies everywhere. And there was also the even more tinfoil crew. It's they believed that that the Aztec calendar was going to end in the year 2000.
Yes.
So it meant that the world was going to end, which, again, not only was that not untrue, but even if it was true, it's the I do not know how Aztec's calendar could affect a planetary extinction level. It could cause an extinction level event in the on a planet. So everybody at the Games Workshop design studio was laughing, like me and Rick. And then we thought that what if it was real? What if year 2000 was an end, but let's do it in the Warhammer world because we don't want it happening here.
Yes.
And we looked at the Warhammer history, and it was really interesting because the year 2000 in the Warhammer history is one of the most interesting ones in Empire, the central, the nation of the Warhammer world, or at least for humans. So the Empire had broken into small pieces. There were 3 competing emperors. It was just before the Vampire Wars. So one of the provinces of the Empire was ruled by a vampire count who masqueraded as a human. It was before the Great Skaven Wars. So so it was actually a really interesting time period because we couldn't really drop a comet at that point in the actual Warhammer history, which was at that point around year 2514-ish, I think.
Okay.
So we set it at 2000, so it was 500 years before. And then we didn't want to drop a comet that destroyed the planet, but we destroyed a city. And the reason we ended up with the comet was that as you know, Mordheim is a tabletop battle. So if you were experienced tabletop gamer and I asked you, you'd know this immediately. Maybe you do know. It's the worst possible.
I probably don't know, but tell me.
The worst possible piece of terrain if you are playing a miniature game is a house. Because imagine it, because it's closed box.
Yeah.
That you kind of think you should be able to interact with, but there's a usually slanted roof or whatever. So terrible for playing game. But if you drop a comet on the city, so all the houses are broken, so all the interesting bits inside become available, and you have this the multi-layered the gaming space. It suddenly becomes super exciting and interesting. So that's why we ended up with comet. Of course, this was like in 80s already. It was settled that the twin-tailed comet is the symbol of Sigmar Heldenhammer, the patron god of the empire, the man who ascended into godhood and became the sort of a demigod who protects the empire. And every time the twin-tailed comet has appeared on the sky, it's something truly momentous has happened. It happened when the Sigmar Heldenhammer was born. It happened during the end times, during the first Chaos Incursion, and then during Mordheim. So it was this kind of a real world being reflected in the fantasy world. That the sort of where the Mordheim's creative process came from. There was, of course, like we've been looking at to making a skirmish game for Warhammer, since at that time we believed that that it's super hard to get into Warhammer main because you need a huge army and tons of troops, cost a lot of money. You have this rule book that is massive that you need to learn. So we wanted something that you could pick up and play, that you'd pay a lot less money for. So there was a demand for this. But because this was, and we could have just made Warhammer Skirmish, but that didn't excite me or anybody else at the studio creatively. So then when I pitched the idea, and I got John Blanche, who is the art director of Games Workshop, and he's the grand old man of the European fantasy art, who painted the cover of the first edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It was John. Who did maybe you remember the book, the World of Tolkien, with all those beautiful and all the color plates on that. That was John. And of course, he is the man behind the iconic look of Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. And he got.
Sorry to interrupt you, but how does that feel when you develop a game and then you get this legend saying, okay, well, I guess I'm doing the artwork? Like that must have been.
Yeah, John is John is very down to earth kind of person, and he has this wonderful quality as an art director that he truly gets into the lore, he has a huge respect for the writers, which isn't that common necessarily. It's the in all parts of the games industry. So he was like me. He just got excited. It's the and it was infectious. So it
Yeah.
wasn't so much that I thought, wow, John is into this, and rather that, wow, John is drawing all these crazy images and doing this insane art guide. And I
Yeah.
think John had been waiting for an opportunity to do something like that. At that point, if you look at Warhammer 5th edition and 4th edition, the Warhammer's look and feel was much more cartoony, and so the management wanted to make it more approachable for younger audience,
Yeah.
and that isn't really John. John is fine because John's point of view is that when he was kid, he was into like grimdark stuff. So he thought, well, all the other kids are going to be like me, so why would I do something
Yeah.
that would be not for them? But the Mordheim was this very, very sort of a almost a perfect setting for John's art style, because the civilization has the much of it has collapsed, and of course locally it's the apocalypse, and it's brought the worst of all of the people around. So that's why the Mordheim rulebook art is so iconic. And of course it wasn't just John. I mean, I had such a who's who list of artists. I had Carl Kopinski, I had Dave Gallagher, I had John Wigley, the Paul. There was all these people who became these very, very, very revered artists who were then young and hungry, who all got into this. Gav, it's the Gavin Thorpe. It's he was just starting on writing fiction, which was always his main passion with the game design, and he wrote all the story lore snippets on the book. And of course, I had the backing of Rick. It's the SA who created the original creator of both Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000. He was he was a group director at that point, but still very active in the design. So I had a all-star team, and I think this was sort of a issue of stars aligning. It's
and comets aligning.
Yeah. It's
and so this is 1999. How old were you then?
Good question. I was 26, 27, something like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Like considering you're working, I mean, it sounds like you had an amazing group of people to work with in that studio. And I mean, I guess at 26, like you just take what you have and run with it. And you don't, I guess, as I kind of get older creatively, I feel more fearful. But in my 20s, I just thought I could do anything. So
yeah, of course, you haven't had big failures usually at that point, or it's you are more likely to do something completely left field. But also I was also in a time when there was a sort of a little bit of a change of guard. There had been a core number of designers at Games Workshop who'd been there for a very long time and were grizzled veterans.
okay.
And they did want to bring up new talent. So me, Ian Pickstock, is the Gavin Thorpe, Alessio Cavatore, some others also that the came. Not everybody made it. This is normal, but there was I think a great mixture, like people who really been round the bend and knew their stuff, and then young people with different ideas. And I've always found that for creativity, that's quite good. But it was my first boxed game. I've done the Realm of Chaos before, so I've done a boxed set, because these are in the hierarchy of the Games Workshop releases. It's the big box game. That's when you know it's
You made it.
You made it. It's because the company is giving you so much in your hands. It's millions and millions online. And it's obviously it's less to do with the books, because the Games Workshop is a miniatures company.
Right.
But of course, the better game you make, the better miniatures are made, and the better it all becomes. And it's still miniature designers vastly prefer working hand in hand with designers and creating something, because then you get a coherent world. That has like a real roots to it.
Yeah. You're not like looking in different, like you're not thinking, oh, I need to get this dwarf. I wonder if I get this from this other set, it could work here. They're married together.
Yeah.
Cool. And so could you tell me, because I know a load of people that contact me about Mordheim, they also love the idea of making their own games, or they make up their own rules and stuff. So could you tell me, I'm sorry, you probably get asked this question all the time. How did you begin? And like now you're working in computer games, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
could you tell me your origin story, how you became like a board game superhero and how you've evolved into computer games?
Yes, and I always start with this, that whoever you are not going to get into industry the way I did. As far as I know, I'm the only one who's got it this way. But at that point, the internet, when I was really young, the internet was at its infancy. And the like at that point, when you wanted your emails, it actually took several hours to download that day's emails. And the action on the war games, the international war games scene was on the message groups. And I was very, very active there. And for my own enjoyment, I wrote tactics articles, new army lists. And at that point, Jervis Johnson is he's done so many of the Games Workshop's main games, starting with Blood Bowl and uh, ending with, he did the Age of Sigmar's rules. I mean, Jervis has done so many
Everything.
games. Yeah. He's a titan of the field. So he loved because he was on the internet, unlike anybody else in the design studio, and really liked it. And he just said, "Hey, come and talk to us." So I went there, and they offered me a job first at Citadel Journal, and after a week, it's the Citadel Journal head honcho said, "No, it's you're wasted here." So they put me on the White Dwarf. All the designers at that point went and worked in the White Dwarf first. And that is a good thing, because then you learn to produce quickly and get stuff done fast, and learn to respect deadlines and the finish things. Because at White Dwarf, the article has to be nicely laid out. It's it has to be, spelling has to be correct. The layout has to be there. It has to be well written. So it's a great school.
Yeah.
And then I was promoted into game designer, then the senior game designer, the Warhammer lead designer, and so on and so forth. So but nobody gets discovered like that. It's remember, at that point there were no schools for game design. They
Right.
just were. It's
No.
what is interesting is quite a few of the designers, of the original designers of Warhammer, they were actually, they graduated from archaeology. It's
Whoa, that's so interesting.
yeah, and I think it's the Rick, and even those who didn't, are very, very well respected scholars nowadays, like Andy Chambers and the Perry twins have published multiple the very well respected scholarly work on
Right.
the historical and ancient warfare. They are extremely knowledgeable about it. And I think the archaeology is because you deal with objects. So deal with something very tangible. I think that really helps them. But my story is I wrote stuff when the internet was embryonic, and the Games Workshop liked the stuff so much they offered me a job. But nobody will get a job like that. So nobody should try to do it that way.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter how good your rules tweaks are. But I mean, so then you're now working in video games, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make the transition, or is it all kind of similar to you? You just pull stories and
It is for me, and and remember, there are many kinds of designers. Some are what we would call writers, who do lore and the story of the game in story-driven games, and
right.
some are. I'm a mechanics designer, so I come up with
Yes,
the how the game works.
do you love rules?
Yeah, of course. I
So,
mean, I'm a huge rule nerd.
so if you and I were playing a game of Dungeons and Dragons,
Yep.
would you notice if I was like making stuff up and cheating?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh no.
But I'm a kind of DM that I usually get to know my players very well, and we discuss it. So what kind of game do we want to play?
Okay.
A rules lawyering is I think that the when we're talking about RPGs, that the DM's job is not to, because if the player believes that there is no risk, that the DM is always going to save them,
Yeah.
that it's boring.
It's
If
boring.
they think that the DM is trying to kill you, it's terrible. So a good DM is the builds a challenge that is solvable by the players if they use their noggins and their characters,
Yeah.
but does not like artificially try to help them or try to kill them. Because both lead into a bad experience, and respects the player agency. It's the cause.
Yeah.
Like an D&D I run this couple of sessions back, there was a dungeon I really wanted to run that my players came into, and they decided not to go there. And of course, as a DM, I could make it so that they have to do the dungeon, but I would have to like sort of interrupt in the what actually happened in the game world, and DMs shouldn't act that way. So, but I do think that the DM should know the rules. It's because it's also very annoying if the DM can't tell you that what roll you need to make to pick a lock and what's the DC. And you can't really be a game designer without it. But game designer types, there are the level designers in the video games who build the challenges within the levels. You have technical designers who interface between the programmers and the design. They often are good at scripting, which is like halfway programming, and all sorts of other kind of, you have meta and systems and economy designers. I can do quite a few things, but usually the stuff I do, which is the player experience and mechanics, like how do you control it, and what happens, and what are the chances if I swing sword I hit, is the kind of design that I'm good at, and the one that's usually one that's most in demand. It's the teams I've been, and I've been a game director and a design director for multiple companies. So I also provide a leadership for the younger designers in quite a few places that I've worked.
Yay. Well, thank you for going on my sidetrack about the kind of dungeon master you are. I think I love that you would rather be collaborative with your players. And I think it's also wonderful to speak to somebody who has made a career out of making games, because so many of my friends on my Twitter, especially, they have so much creativity and passion, and a lot of them will work full-time jobs but still be creating games in their downtime. So it's kind of good to see someone who just gets to do it all the time. Do you still play Mordheim now?
When I get a chance. Now, there is a thing that I get invited into a lot of events, but there is the fundamental problem on playing, especially if it's a competitive tournament. I'm the creator, so everybody will come to me with their rules questions and ask me to and you know what? If I play against somebody and there is any judgment, nobody's gonna, no matter how many times I tell that I'm just playing, nobody's gonna go, they're just gonna go with what I judged. And then if I win, well, did I win because I played well, or did I win because I'm a creator? So I don't get that as many chances as people think. And you also have to be I can't kind of take part in tournament and be the umpire, but natural. Like I do it, of course. If I talk to the creator of a game that I like, is I ask them to okay, so this rule, how does this work?
Yeah.
It's and you can't serve two masters then, because I'm quite competitive. So these do not mix very well. So, but I do play Mordheim. I'm in process of making a new Witch Hunter warband. So but I also I've made many games, and I do play my own games. When I get a chance. I mean, the Warhammer 6th edition that I wrote. It also has a very, very strong community.
Yeah. Well, so when you play Mordheim, are you most likely to play Witch Hunters then? That's your favorite. Yeah. Okay, great. Good to know. I am yet to play it. I have a feeling someone is going to play it with me. What tips would you give to a beginner? Is there a warband that's better than another warband, for instance?
If you'd go purely for power and optimization, you'd probably in the box, you'd take Skaven. There are Elven warbands, but there's a reason why I didn't put them in the game myself, because they are so broken, they are so strong. But Mordheim is, you should approach it like halfway like a D&D game and halfway like a war game. A beginner, you have to realize that the Mordheim is a harsh mistress. So losing any warriors, especially your heroes, is devastating, especially in the beginning. And if the tide turns against you, you should run away. It's the rules allow you, after taking a casualties, to quarter of your warband as casualties, to run away. So well, originally it was just one model, but I recommended it after people started just bottling immediately after it. The post-battle sequence is often at least as important as the battle itself. Of course, the battle itself is really fun, because the warbands, the money it makes, the exploration rolls it makes, and exploration charts are potentially, especially in the beginning, even more impactful than how well you did in the game. The Mordheim is for a beginner. I would really say it's the well, avoid armor, avoid very complex warbands. I really think it's more important that you find a warband that you can make your own and love. It's them as your sort of like your D&D adventuring party, rather than it's the halfway between a war game and an RPG, and that's what it was meant to be. So your characters gain experience, gain new skills. It's but you should, a bit like in D&D, it's if you have a PC down, your party should move a heaven and earth, try to
resurrect.
You shouldn't be flippant with your, because replacing losses is expensive, replacing experience is often impossible. It's especially your heroes are vital. So but really, I think more important than going for the most powerful warband, it's I would go for one that excites you to play with.
I mean, I always love to play like lawful good characters or like chaotic good in D&D. And the more I learn about the Grimdark is that no one is good. Everyone is out for themselves. So
well, you have the sisters. You have the sisters of Sigmar.
Yes, you wanted to tell me a bit about the sisters. So yeah, please tell me about them.
Yeah. So again, at that point, it's because most of the sculptures at GW came from historical war games sculpting, and if you look at the history of the warfare, it has been overwhelmingly men. So that's what they learn to sculpt, because if you're doing a Napoleonic army, you're sculpting it. There ain't gonna be that many women. So and of course then there is at that point it's these are still popular. There was a lot of female sculpting was more of a pin-up than warriors. There was a little bit of change already in the air. But I didn't really do the sisters thinking about that. It's just that I was building the map of the Mordheim, and I was doing it in 3D. So I was using little houses and building a model. And then I made an island that was in the shape of twin-tailed comet. And I thought this is where the Temple of Sigmar of the city was. And I put it in there, and then I looked at that looks like a convent. And then I thought, what if they were a female warrior order? And that's how the Brides of Sigmar came to be. It was a very rare at that point that there were, especially in fantasy, that there were that many female models at all. But because the sisters of Sigmar, they're the brides of Sigmar, so a bit like the nuns in the Catholic Church, they are wedded to Sigmar, the god, so they don't take earthly spouses. But they were the daughters of the noble families that were troublemakers, that you couldn't marry us because they would punch their suitors and and of course in the Warhammer world that is suffused with magic. It's the heroes are larger than life, because for example the Underbergen tribe where the Sigmar came from were in essence a bit like Space Marines, superhuman. So it stands for reason that also the women of the Underbergen tribe, they would be extremely capable warriors. It's in their essence.
Yeah.
So and then because Sigmar is a warrior god,
Yeah.
even the female orders, it was not like Christianity, which is based on the not taking up the sword. It's the if you're a priest or a nun, or a monk, it's the Sigmar was a warrior god, so part of their training was the militaristic training. It's because their god was the god of war, the defender of the empire. And this is really how the sisters came about. So it was again not, my creative process doesn't work in the that I say that I am going to create a order of warrior nuns. It was
Yeah.
this bit by bit, the
Yeah,
ideas
yeah, yeah.
came
I
everywhere.
love that. I mean, it really, I really love it, and it reminds me of when I see some really good terrain. So someone's
Mm,
created it, and you can instantly make stories from just seeing this terrain
mm,
before there are even characters on it. So I love that you had this comet, and then a convent, and then the sisters came.
mm,
But in our Facebook messages,
mm.
so you have said to me, maybe so if I was playing the Sisters of Sigmar and your favorite is the Witch Hunters, they're not friends, right? So
Yeah.
we would, so what's the vibe with those two groups?
Okay. So in that time in the empire, it's there were three claimants to the imperial throne, and one
So,
of them was
so one of them was this guy Marcus that I learned about.
it's the Grand Prince of Reichland. It's
Okay.
and then there is the Elector Count of Middenheim. But then there was Margrethe of Marienburg, the only woman claimant to the imperial throne, who
Okay.
is a patron of the sisters.
Got it.
Now, but the sisters are the high priest of Sigmar, which is the equivalent of the Pope, supports the Prince of Reichland.
Yeah.
So part of the sort of, this wasn't written clearly, but the part of the thinking was that the Grand Theogonist, the high priest of Sigmar, they declared the sisters as heretics, even though they were of the same faith. And
What?
therefore, it was because he supported
Because
the Grand
he's a
High.
bad guy.
Yeah,
He's
well,
corrupt.
but yes, but if you look at the sort of because the empire is based on the Holy Roman Empire, and
Ah,
you look at the political machinations there, this was Tuesday. It's this was how it was. So the witch hunters, who are the Templars of Sigmar and the
oh,
purgers of heretics,
ah,
it's what the Grand Theogonist said, that the women cannot be priests of Sigmar, and of course the entire order of the sisters are priestesses.
yeah.
So so he declared them heretics, and then the witch hunters is following the edict of the Grand Theogonist, is they came to Mordheim. Of course, witch hunters are not there just to kill the sisters; they are there to kill the possessed, the Skaven, all the mercenaries who get
Yeah,
in their
everybody.
way, everybody. Because there is pretty much nobody that is not suspected of heresy. And the interesting thing, of course, is that while Grand Theogonist had declared that the women could not be priests of Sigmar at that point,
Uh-huh.
they could be witch hunters. So you could
Okay.
have fanatical women witch hunters coming
Okay.
after the Sigmar. It's and of course the reality, if you look at it, it's because the magical powers that the sisters can call upon are the prayers of Sigmar. So Sigmar is still granting them their prayers, which then
Mm,
shows that they are not heretics, because the god wouldn't grant the prayers then.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh,
but this creates this interesting like a tension within the church. Like this is a schism within the temple of Sigmar. It's
yeah.
again, with probably, if you just want to throw some dice and play a miniature game, it doesn't matter that much. But those who are into the lore of
Yeah.
Mordheim, and it's quite interesting because there are a lot of RPGs being played set in Mordheim. It's
I mean, I think I love the fact that there's law. When I'm encouraged to play games, I my friend Ian made me play this horrible game, which is basically Tyranids versus Space Marines.
yeah,
And you can't win if you're the Space Marines.
yeah.
So essentially it's a game where you're just going to get killed again and again and again. But I was like, well, maybe I could give the Space Marines names at least. And this one is, and this one, trying to add story and lore makes it so much more, it embodies the experience more and makes it feel more,
Was it
nutritious.
Tyrannid Attack or Space Hulk? Which one?
Oh, I can't remember. I'm going to get in trouble
Space
now.
Hulk is the probably the best known one. It's been a bestseller for 30 years.
It's the one where you have like hexagonal tiles.
Then I think that's the Tyrannid Attack. Yeah, and that's probably even more merciless. Yeah.
Yeah, Tyranids are not my favorite, so
Yeah.
by no means. So I was one of the skirmish games that I have played is a game called Frostgrave,
Yeah.
because I play at a group called Hackney Area Tabletop Enthusiasts, and Joe has come down and like demonstrated. So clearly, to me, like having learned about Mordheim and played Frostgrave, they feel like quite similar. So Mordheim, we think maybe like a template for these skirmish games that come along, and then do you play them and do you enjoy them?
Yeah, I mean, I am very sort of, of course, it's quite flattering that there are fair few games that either are directly following the Mordheim's footsteps or are heavily inspired by it. And that's, of course, very flattering.
Yeah.
The imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? I haven't played Frostgrave. I've read the rules, but then I play a ton of games. So, but there are more games than anybody could ever play. But I'm very aware of it, and they've done well, and I'm super happy. And for me, sort of look at that, there is this little subgenre of wargaming, the ruined city skirmish.
Yes.
The Mordheim started.
Yeah, there's something very magical about that. And I loved I mean, I kind of come from this place of I love rainbows and unicorns and crystals. So I was delighted that you chose the things that you would hunt in wartime are weird crystals.
Yeah.
So was there anything around that other than, for me, I'm like, oh, I can imagine this is a pretty priceless thing that I'm chasing. But what was the inspiration around crystals on the table?
Yeah. So the Warhammer world has two moons. Only one of Manaslieb is the only one visible, like it looks like our moon. But there is the dark moon, Morslieb, which is made out of this the glowing chaos crystal, is called Wheatstone or Warpstone. And in the lore of the Mordheim, it's the comet is a shard from it. And actually, there came a rider with the shard from the dark moon. It's called the Shadow Lord, who then the raised the possessed as the cult of possessed around him is sort of a supernatural being from the beyond that came with the comet is and lives in the pit that the comet left behind. So these are pieces of chaos stone. This has a long history in Warhammer. They are basically a raw essence of magic that's crystallized.
Wow.
So they can be used for various things. They are also corrupting, because all magic, unless it's a holy prayer in Warhammer world, is extremely corrupting, because it's sourced ultimately the realm of chaos, which is this the dark sort of. Well, have you seen Event Horizon?
I can't watch it because it's too scary, but a lot of people give me that reference. So yeah.
So that's realm of chaos, is the dimension of utter chaos, and well, evil is of course a question of the perspective. But the stones are raw stuff of magic. They can mutate to you, but they can also grant you great power. And Mordheim stories, because what happened immediately after Mordheim, events of Mordheim finished, the great vampire wars started. The blood won cast, and finally it became powerful enough to cast a great spell of doom and rise all the dead from mountains to the river Ster, and march against the empire. But the reason for that is that his servants, when you play the undead in Mordheim, they are gathering the Wheatstone shards and taking to Bloodborne Castle.
It's your fault.
Yeah, it is. So the reason for the Great Vampire Wars, which is one of the seminal events in the Warhammer history, was because the undead servants, the vampire thralls who went to Mordheim on the sly, gathered the Warpstone. So, but it's also if you look at the artwork and the background, it's Mordheim sort of symbolizes the battle for the human soul. It's also Warpstone. Is symbol of the temptation, of the easy path to power. Like instead of working hard, you come into this city to collect this. So there is like a power is lying about. But of course, in order to get it, you have to the kill people and the stab people in the back and the fight in these desperate situations and
Yeah.
be subject to mutations. So it's in a way it's a sort of a story of how the power corrupts. It's the
Wow. That's beautiful. I think that's so graceful the way it ties into the vampire history. And yet every grimdark experience I have, if there's any purity, it's always sullied because of power. Always. So yeah, classic. So I have a couple of questions from my patrons.
Go for it.
So I want to ask you. So I think you've met Eric because Eric works on you've met or spoken to Eric. He works on 28 with me.
Yeah.
He's written, by the time Mordheim was created, Games Workshop had a number of other skirmish games like Necromunda and Gorkamorka. How did they play into the design, and were there elements from them you liked or ones that you felt you had to change for Mordheim?
Oh, it's Necromunda was huge inspiration. I love Necromunda, great
Yay.
game. It's and there are certainly similarities. There were things that I changed in rather major ways. Like one of them is that in the Mordheim, when you are the attacked, and if you're not taken out, you're either stunned or knocked down. And instead of you having like to roll dice or put markers, you actually, if you are stunned, you place the model face down on the ground, and if you're not, the other way around, and then you flip it over, and then you can stand it up. It's so I tried to streamline and make it easier for you to play. I didn't want to do Overwatch, which is a huge part of the 40k style games, where the people can shoot at you out of turn, because it really sort of didn't get the right feeling. It's the fantasy, science fiction games are very much about shooting. Like you want that there's a lot of bolt of fire going on, but fantasy games you want to the to the fisticuffs. So Mordheim was a very much the rules give a slight edge if you play well to melee, as opposed to you guys just standing aside and shooting at each other. Partly because the shooting weapons are not as complex and involved and maybe as interesting as they are in 40k, which is a sci-fi game.
Yeah.
So the exploration system I completely redid. It's very different, but yeah, there were all those three games they share DNA for sure, and they have to, because the point of those games was to allow you to play the big games, 40k and Warhammer.
Right.
So deviating too far from each other would make no sense, because that was not the point of those games.
Yeah. I think it's really lovely. I mean, you get to kind of slip and slide through these different streams of lore and epicness, so you can be in a space battle across the galaxy, or you can be in this just searching out like warbands to destroy. Thank you for that answer. I'm sure it will satisfy Eric. And then James has been very cheeky and asked like 3 questions, maybe like a lot together. So the first question says, I'll read it all because it's like 3 in 1. Which edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle do you play now? And he's asked this because he's building an army for 6th, 7th, but also looking at fan-made 9th edition rules. And what were the main things that you wanted to shift with your focus on the 6th edition?
Yeah. Well, I am obviously hugely biased because 6th edition is the one edition that I wrote. And quite frankly, I think it would be dishonest to say that I don't like it, because why would I write it? I mean, I wanted to put the best possible edition out that had everything I liked about both the new Warhammer and the old Warhammer. Having said that, since the Warhammer Fantasy Battle is not an actively developed game anymore, I think there is much more leeway in the nabbing the stuff from the editions you really like. A lot of people play 6 with some 7, using the Ravening Hordes army list from the 6th of or there's the effort on 9th. And I don't think it's as long as the people agree, I don't think there needs to be, since there is no one dominant edition right now, it's to be any sort of how would I say, define that I'm playing 6th edition, you can easily say that, hey, let's use 6th edition and take these rules from the 7th and make our own edition. But the 6th edition is the one where I made Warhammer like how I'd like to play it, is to keeping the classic rules. Now, Warhammer is an old school game. It's the I go, you go game.
Yeah.
And that's because it's the granddaddy. It's the venerable, hoary old ancestor of the other games that looks benevolently from this throne on all these little games scurrying. Is the bless you, my children. So if I'd make a game now, it would be very different. I would probably go for the alternate activation. In fact, I'm working on a tabletop game right now. It's with James Sheriff and what's the artist name? Sorry, I'll give that a name to you later. But I think that it is good that the old school games do not disappear, because you can see the change in the wargaming industry. If you know the old games and the new games. Now, nowadays, people go so much for the streamlining that I think sometimes the grittiness is you lose some of the storytelling aspects. Let me give you an example. So imagine you have an orc that has this like a gun that's is a rapid shooting gun, but is prone to jamming. So the orc goes, bang, bang, bang. Why doesn't it work? Now, translating that into rules, you can do it two ways. You can either say that it hits on 4+ and does 3 points of damage, or you can do that you roll how many dice the comes off when it shoots, but if you roll doubles, it jams. And then you can take the risk and roll more dice. Let's say these are d4s. So you roll, if I roll 4 d4s, I might get a huge number of hits. But if I roll any doubles, it's going to jam. You can make it so that the both of them on the average do exactly the same amount of damage. Now, the latter one, where you just roll d6 and on a 4 it hits, is much simpler and much more streamlined. And it's much faster, so it's much quicker to play. But the other system is very clunky and sort of gritty, but it's story also, because then you imagine that, oh God, I'm going to shoot so much, and then it gets jammed the gun. So you create a little mini story. It's much slower, it's much harder to remember, it's much clunkier, but on the flip side, it's much more immersive. So, and I don't think one of them is right or wrong. But I think it's important that the players of today have choice. So there is something to be said about the old school, the gaming like that. It's which very much draws its roots from the D&D.
Yeah.
And
wow. I mean, the way you talk about mechanics, I mean, as somebody that I try and duck my head when it comes to heavy rules, you're making them sound like such beautiful things, and I completely get what you're saying. So thank you for, I mean, it's clear that this is why you do what you do. You're great at it. Thank you. James also would like to know, what armies do you play in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and have you played Warhammer Total War games?
Yes, both. High Elves, always my first love, and they always will be. I'm a huge Tolkien nerd, and the Silmarillion is a big one for me, and I always like the High Elven armies, the purest is the dressed in white with their high helmets and the impeccable knights and the beautiful chariots and the sort of the rows of the elven shields with the iconography and the tall spears. It's what I always wanted to play. It's the High Elves are my first love, and they will always be the one that I always go for that in almost any game I play, except RPGs. There I play humans.
Interesting. Is that because of the +1 modifier, or?
No, it's more sort of that I want to experience a fantasy world. I mean, to be honest, I'm a forever DM. So I very, 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 very rarely do anything else. But the humans, to me, represent they are usually the movers and the shakers. They can fit into any situation. So I like them as characters because no matter where you go, they can take part.
Yes.
The while there are like there are usually areas either in the world or in the mechanics where certain like dwarves, elves, Arakora, tieflings, whatever, excel. But humans are sort of they can engage with all the aspects of the game.
Yeah.
So that's why. But the second part of the question was about the Total War Warhammer. Absolutely, it's the splendid game. It's the and a really it's very very satisfying seeing that a lot of the characters I created for Warhammer they are now in the game, and
Amazing.
hearing the voice actors and the all the animators and the artists doing they're putting them alive. And it's very well made game. It's a great game. It's also an interesting game because it's so popular. So it
Okay.
really shows that the old world, which the Games Workshop discarded, is still immensely popular. So I think it shows that that world has never lacked fans, but it can sometimes lack the right product. Like we all know that Warhammer 8th edition wasn't played much, but it clearly wasn't because the world of Warhammer was not evocative and didn't appeal to people. So you just need to do the right game. And Total War Warhammer is that game, for example.
Oh, thank you. We're coming to the end of our time, so I have a couple quick questions for you.
Go ahead.
What did you think of the adaptation of The Lord of the Rings that was on TV recently?
Okay, this is the one, I am a very, very easygoing, mainly when it comes to adaptations, but Tolkien is my one bias. And to me, this is very important to understand because I know there were people who I am sure put a lot of effort into what they did. But to me, there can only be one Middle Earth and only one storyline. And it is the one that Tolkien created. And if you want to change it, you have to do at least as good job as a world crafter and creator and writer. And frankly, Tolkien, whenever there is a poll on what is the novel of the 20th century, Lord of the Rings wins every time. Like there is no other book and it doesn't matter where it is in the world. It wins hands down. And I just don't think it's basically I'd say to them that I'm sorry, but you guys just aren't Tolkien. You should have made a different series, but you had your own story, your own characters, your own world. You should have done that. Because I can't recognize, because I know the Tolkien's Legendarium and history inside out.
Yeah.
And what they did isn't that. And I can't engage with it. I don't want, there's a lot of like a vitriolic hatred, and I don't think that's useful. But you ask from me, it's I can't say that it wasn't for me as a somebody who's, of course, when I read Lord of the Rings when I was 12, it stole my heart and it never has given it back. And you can't tell, in my opinion, the Middle Earth is Tolkien's, and you can't tell the story in any other way. And if you adapt it, it's the problem is that any change you make, you will then be measured directly against him as a storyteller and world builder. Like all the stuff you look at his book, like when the Rohan rides to aid Gondor, he calculated very carefully how long it would take, and all the tactics of the Pelennor field, which Steve Jackson changed because he wanted bloody ghosts. Everything was, because remember, Tolkien he survived the First World War. He was in the Battle of Somme, which is why he became a pacifist in the long term, because he learned to hate war so much. But he knew what he was writing about. And you have these people who, I'm sure they're trying their best, but you try to write about a war, and the writer that you're trying to change is a veteran of Somme, who is an officer there, who lost every one of his friends there, who knew everything, like what it is like to be on a battlefield. It's it's just so, you just don't have what it takes, unfortunately, and that's not your fault, but you don't have the life experience that Tolkien had. You don't have the erudite knowledge of literature that he has. and I'm sorry, but you fall short. And I, to be fair to the creators of the series, I think anybody would have fallen short, very short.
Yeah.
And again, I am totally realize I am hugely biased, but this is the one bias I'm holding on to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt the same. I thought they designed it, it looked beautiful, but it wasn't like my Tolkien world. And I felt really conflicted about Sauron becoming a romantic bad boy lead. Do you know?
Yeah,
I mean, blew my mind.
I mean, Sauron was a corrupt angelic spirit that was created in the beginning of the time and was corrupted and fell from grace. I mean, there isn't really he is unlike elves who still their body can bodily die. It's he's truly immortal. The fallen angel. It's and we know what he was like. He was Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, who claimed that he came from the Valar. It's there was no whatever Halbrand they called him. Like this was your invention. We know what happened. It's because I was like but that's not how the story went.
Yeah.
And I also had like I wouldn't have minded because this is a very long period of time. It's they could have, for example, I think having a woman warrior in Tolkien world is quite interesting. But they could have used, for example, somebody from the House of Haleth, who traditionally had women warriors, and their leader was during the Wars of Beleriand was a woman, and they were warrior people. While Galadriel, it's I don't think. I mean, why somebody who had so much of the divine power, like any she would encounter, she would just wave her hand and the orc would kneel. Why would she use sword? In the end of the Lord of the Rings, which always like impacted me, this was after she lost the ring, the Elven Ring of Power. She went to Dol Guldur and pulled the walls of the great fortress down. And I don't think she did it by pulling the kilometer tall the wall down by hand. No, she was so powerful that I don't see any connection. And she was at that point of the history, well, she was 5,000 plus years old. She'd been married for 2,000 years. She's been a mother for 1,500 years. I don't get any of that vibe from the It's just, and I'm sorry. It's the Elrond is doesn't bear any sort of resemblance to the Elrond in the books. And Celebrimbor, who was the young one, who was this dashing like the grandson of Fair, like this full of himself. There was a very interesting, the original story Tolkien told, where the Celebrimbor threw Galadriel and Celeborn out of Eregion Bay because Sauron was corrupting him. He was this young, naive, fundamentally good, but the misled young prince. And he's a great actor, but he's what, 5,000 years old, 500 years old in our time. He's an old man, and I can't see how Celeborn, who in the Tolkien story goes and defends the gates of Eragon against Sauron himself in single combat with this old dude. It's I don't see it. It's weird casting choices. It's and I just think that unfortunately it's the most expensive entertainment product done in human history. And this is the first thing these guys did. And I think that maybe it should have been given to somebody with a little bit of a track record. Anyway, I've ranted enough.
Well, if I wish I'd known, maybe we'll have to do another video another time where you just tell me about Tolkien, because I love meeting Tolkien scholars. There's a great podcast called The Legendarium that I listen to, and it's just brilliant, like hearing all the lore come to life. Okay, so that was going to be a quick question, so I will be quick. What you mentioned you play D&D. Do you play homebrew, or are you playing any published campaigns right now?
We finished just the Storm King's Thunder, and I'm doing a heavily homebrewed the Dreams of the Red Wizards. I am quite fan of the Ed Greenwood's, especially the original Forgotten Realms lore. It's quite cleaned up now. It used to have quite a bit more of a grit and depth in the but of course all those old books are available.
Yeah.
I run the campaigns because one of my players, she's a great player, but she's a very visual person. So for her to play, it makes so much easier for her to sort of the get immersed and follow and the enjoy it if there's artwork. And the advantage with the published books is that I have a huge amount of
Yeah.
art that she can sort of interact with. This is what I talked about, that I try to take my players into account, and this has really worked. It's she's like a most enthusiastic D&D player I've had in a very long time,
Oh, yay.
and and you have to take into account this who's playing with you. So it's also, I'm a professional game designer,
Yeah.
so I tend to like to, when I play myself, I tend to like to play where somebody else has done all the work that I do during my
Yeah.
work, so I can enjoy somebody else who went through all that. And it also means that I learn stuff. It's I consider Ed Greenwood a great world crafter. So playing in his world is reading what he wrote about it, like the cuisines and the languages and whatnot, is useful to me professionally. So
Cool.
I could homebrew everything, and I've done homebrew campaigns, but generally, because it's my free time, it's I don't like to work. It's I like to do the DMing.
Yeah. I just downloaded a second edition. It's the Dragonlance story, and
Yeah.
it's actually been written so you're playing as along the books. You're kind of supposed to play within the storyline, and
Yeah.
the rule system is something called the saga system.
Mm.
And I really hate learning rules. I hate crunchy stuff, but I think just to play as those characters that I really love, so I could be Gold Moon or I could be Tanis, is going to be really fun. And of course, Raistlin, he begins as a red wizard.
Yeah.
So there's a connection there.
Yeah. I noticed the name of this was I thought this must be from Dragonlance, that you didn't pick the name in random.
Oh, I love Dragonlance. It was one of my first kind of, my dad used to read loads of sci-fi and fantasy, and then I'd pick his books up. He'd be like, no, 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 because they were too grown up.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
You discovered Dragonlance. Yeah, I love Sturm as my word
Yeah.
is my honor and my honor is my life. I hate it that in the new edition, I love that because Huma, Dragonbane, had this magnificent mustache in the first night of Solamnia, and then all the knights wore the mustache is in honor of him. And in the new edition, they no longer have their moles, and I'm so sad. I love I love the one where Fist and Dantilus, when the knights are arguing, as the says, one more word and I will make your mustache fall off. And then all the knights.
And that's how you know Fistantilus. That's how you know, like, powerful wizard. They know what to get you. Yeah, I feel like Sturm could be a very kind of Finnish character as well. That kind of like bearing and noble nature. So okay, so to finish off, I should probably ask, like, what are you playing and what are you working on? What can we expect to see from you soon?
Okay, so I'm playing, right now the God of War Ragnarok. It's pretty much finished all the extras. It's the Dad of War. Of course, I'm a father myself, so having the father-child relationship is really meaningful, and you get to be this huge badass Greek God of War. It's in the Viking sagas. So I've enjoyed it a lot. I mean, brilliant work from the Sony Santa Monica. I've on video games, it's the company as that I'm part of. It's there's a game called Mr. Autofire. It's that is the for the mobile devices, and there's the game that we decided to call the Sword Game. It's that's just coming out. It's it was so funny because that was the working title, so we decided to call it that and hope that the players get the joke.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm working on tabletop side. I am working on Trench Warfare. It's it's a sci-fi skirmish game. There are already like quite a bit of a few models. It was very successful on Kickstarter, so we are now I'm working on the rules for so you can play games with those miniatures. this is of course more for my love for the tabletop hobbies. I mean, the truth is that the video games industry is massive, so the making a living is quite a bit easier in the video game space. But I never want to give up tabletop completely.
Well, that is a fantastic message that you're not going to do that. You must keep on tabletop for all of us. So let's say goodbye for the video now to everybody. And then I'm going to keep you on the Zoom afterwards so I can get all your details. So
Yep.
thank you so much for joining me.
No problem.
Bye.
Bye-bye.